This is the sixth in a series on Introduction to Corporate Responsibility. I'm Tad Radzinski, speaker, educator, and expert in corporate responsibility and sustainable product development. Today we're going to be talking about carbon footprint and our impact on the carbon cycle. Much of our system is designed around combustion, as many of us know. If you think about it, we drive cars that have internal combustion engines. We produce much of our electricity by burning something. Many of our industrial processes rely on burning fuels in boilers or in thermal oxidizers or in ovens, all kinds of different forms of combustion. And when we do combust things, as you can see in this slide, whether we're burning coal or oil or natural gas or biomass, there's a myriad of chemicals and emissions that come off of our combustion processes. And as you can see in this slide, not only are they gases, but if we're burning solid materials like coal or biomass materials like wood chips or agricultural waste, municipal solid waste, we're going to get solid waste that we have to deal with too, solid materials. And as you can see, a huge amount of material that is released from combustion is carbon dioxide, and CO2 basically is just part of the chemical process of stoichiometric combustion. We also have many other gases that are released, carbon monoxide, various nitrogen oxides, various other things that you see here. We also have to understand that if we're burning certain fuels like coal or number 6 fuel oil, we're also releasing mercury in a gaseous form. If you're familiar with the fact that many times you'll see labels or warnings on tuna cans saying that we can only eat so much tuna, that's primarily from burning coal, where mercury that's contained within the coal in very small amounts is released during the combustion process and basically goes up into the atmosphere and comes down as methyl mercury and ends up in water bodies and on the land and various other things. Another thing that's important to note is the solid waste that you see coming off. There are a lot of different materials within solid waste. It could be things like arsenic or heavy metals. When we're burning other fuels and plastics, there's also releases of dioxins and other emissions that can be hazardous to humans and other species. So the primary fact is that we are burning lots of materials, many of them non-renewable resources. So we're basically taking carbon that was stored in the earth and changing form when we burn it and releasing the CO2 and many of the other elements and chemicals that you see on this diagram. One important note is we generate a huge amount of our electricity from combustion. Whether it's natural gas or coal. Coal is still one of the top fuels used for producing electricity. And in that process, along with the CO2, we're also going to be releasing nitrogen oxides and sulfur oxides, which then come back as acid rain. And if you look at one little fact, EPA tracks through the toxic release inventory roughly 600 toxic chemicals that are released legally to the environment every year. And of that, things like sulfur dioxide, nitrogen oxides, and their constituents are tracked. And out of 4 billion pounds, and that's billion pounds, that are legally released annually, roughly 616 millions are attributed to generating electricity. So when you're thinking about trying to reduce your carbon footprint, turning off lights when you're not in a room, or not making sure your computer's shut down, minimizing use of electricity in heating and cooling buildings, you have a huge impact because power plants are very inefficient. They're only 30% efficient. So not only is there a huge release of carbon dioxide when we're burning fuels to generate electricity, but there's many other constituents that are released in the environment. So keep that in mind. And one thing to think about also is very important for not only individuals but companies and organizations to measure and track their carbon footprint. So by understanding the amount of electricity used, understanding the amount of fuels that are burned both in stationary sources such as boilers or furnaces, but also in your fleet of trucks and forklifts and things like that, you can basically understand your scope 1 and scope 2 emissions, greenhouse gases. So really important to track that, but more importantly is not only understanding it, but then to figure out ways to reduce that. And using life cycle thinking and using thought process around source reduction, waste minimization, redesign of processes on how to reduce these emissions, because it's critical for all of us. We've seen superstorms like Sandy and Katrina over the years that are becoming more frequent, and the climate is changing, there's no doubt. As humans, we've definitely adjusted or made impacts on the carbon cycle, and I cannot say that we are totally responsible for climate change or global warming, but we're definitely contributing to it. It could be cycles on the Earth that are just natural, that are also in combination with our release of CO2. But just this year, we went over 400 parts per million of CO2 in the atmosphere. So this is a serious issue. It requires a focus from all of us. And just by making simple changes, we can have an effect. But we also need to really redesign our energy production system and figure out ways to integrate more renewables, conservation, and just major changes in our energy production system. So thank you for joining today. I appreciate all the comments I've been receiving. We've been getting a lot of great feedback and comments. Keep those coming, because that helps me to adjust and develop the blogs that I'm going to be doing. And again, I appreciate you coming, and I look forward to seeing you on the next blog. Thank you.